Okay, we are reconvening the board meeting at 6:12. Sorry, we had some extra things to talk about. May I please have you stand for the flag salute? We don't have anybody here to do it. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have one bit of action to report out from closed session. In closed session, the board voted to reject the claim of CSEA, motion by Mr. Wallace and second by Mr. Snotterly, and all five board members voted for that. Public communication, agenda and non-agenda items. Any person wishing to comment on agenda and non-agenda items may do so. Please.
You need to read the script.
I already did.
Salary.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Please step to the podium and state your name. It would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes. California law prohibits the school board from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the board. Per board policy BB 9323, individual speakers may be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board may limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the board? May I please have you step and give your name, please?
Good evening. My name is Oralia Cortez. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with me or to speak with you. I ask that you will excuse myself if at any time my emotions get the best of me. My kids' education is very important to me, and this setting is very nerve-wracking. I currently have a sophomore at OHS and a third grader at Von Runner. I'm here to ask that you continue keeping tutoring at our district. I know for a fact that a lot of our students are currently struggling, my daughter being one of them. She's one who needs the extra help and is a shy person. So asking in front of a group of people, not the easiest thing for her to do. I believe that a small group setting will be great. At this time and this moment, she's not at her highest due to another emotional situations that she's going on and is having to miss a lot of class. I have put her health as my priority, but
take your time. That's
as my priority, but I would want her to not miss on the opportunity to get back on her feet. Thank you again, and I will be happy to hear what is the outcome of it. Thank you.
Thank you for the information. We will keep this and take it, and take action on that as soon as we can.
Mrs. Bencourt will reach out to you tomorrow, and we'll talk about what we have available. Thank you. Good seeing you. I want to ask.
We will try it. Go ahead, Vern. Thank you.
Go back and tell us.
Yes. Okay. Alexia, would you like to give us your report? Oh, sorry. I have one more thing. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0. Informational discussion items. Student representative, Ms. Alexia. Oh,
Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody has been well, especially with this very cold weather. I know that I am always freezing. I'm never warm. It's very sad. So at the moment, our Stimbus campus life has been filled with lots of hard and diligent work from our students. So the college application process has passed, and I must say it was a feat, but our students were able to overcome it. The counselor's office was buzzing, the library was full of students annotating and reviewing their applications, and overall finishing final details. It was a pretty suspenseful sight to see the websites to turn applications kept crashing and students fearing that they wouldn't be able to turn in their profile in time. But fortunately, both the CSU and UC applications extended their deadline. I remember when the news broke out, I was on the phone annotating essays with my peers, and I just heard the biggest sighs of relief. And like half of them went to go take a nap because it was the biggest news ever. And we really have to hand it to our counselors because the entire week they were calling in students and extending office hours to help out as much as they could with this process. So right now with finals, students are studying like never before, and the seniors are holding on to the last bits of motivation they have to pull through and finish strong before break. We are so excited for winter break, guys. I cannot emphasize this enough. Unfortunately, though, recently there was a rumor that threatened the safety of our campus last Friday, and it caused a lot of misinformation and fear. Thankfully, our staff did their best to conduct the needed safety procedures, like contacting security to have an investigation take place and making sure that our students were safe, which helped maintain peace on campus. And today we have returned to our usual and normal calm environment. While all this buzz has been happening, our clubs have been working hard to cater more activities towards students. Winter percussion and guard have started their practices, and the band will be having an online concert soon. And something very exciting with the band is that they're supposed to have their new marching uniforms come in this week, which is super cool. So recently, a fashion design club has actually started on campus, and they've had great feedback and student activity. The Rotary Club will be hosting their monthly meeting this week. The Warriors Organization for Women's Empowerment has also been very active with meetings, and the NAMI Club has been making friendship bracelets, making cards and gifts for the convalescent hospital, and have been working diligently to provide stress kits for finals week. All of these clubs and organizations are great and extremely helpful towards students. They promote activity outside of academics and help them catch a breath, especially with this part of the school year. And I must emphasize that these clubs, as well as the staff, have been helpful in maintaining student peace, especially with the events that happened last week. We are very thankful for those clubs. And so sports have also been a really good way for students to cope with these stressors. So basketball games and soccer games, they've had a little bit of turnout and they do captivate student interest. At the moment though, Student Council is putting in a lot of work to have more student turnout, to be at the audience, to not only like bring them more excitement, but also to support our students and our team and promotes team spirit. So the class officers in the student body have also been very proactive. The juniors are planning the winter homecoming, and freshmen, sophomores, and seniors are all planning future fundraisers. And there has also been a really great opportunity that has opened up club funds on our campus. So about a month ago, the cafeteria offered students and organizations to work in their cafeteria in exchange for money gained from the snack bar. So clubs like the STEM Club and the sophomore class and other student groups have taken advantage of this opportunity. And this is really great because it's providing students with work experience as well as giving them money for their clubs. So as you can see, our campus has been very active and all of our students look forward to a very restful break. Thank you for listening.
And you have something to tell us about next year and your educational process.
Yeah. Recently, I was given the opportunity to go to Columbia University in New York for a full ride, and I will be going to that university next year. It's pretty exciting. Thank you very much.
congratulations. You better get a nice warm coat. And I will give you some places to go in the city. And that, do you have an idea why some of the students are not coming to some of the games? Has it been because of COVID or weather?
also think weather, but the student council is kind of making up a plan to kind of have more turnout and stuff like that.
Thank you. Okay. The next part on our information is board, you all received a 2-page form. The board is going to be evaluating themselves, and it's pretty out. I mean, we've done this very similar before. And Mrs. Fox, would you like this back? Is there a time that, what date would you like the best?
January 3rd, and I'll email you.
Bring it into the office? Good, okay. No.
7:15 in the morning, I'm usually there. You can drop it off.
Okay, I like bringing it and smiling at you. Okay, so we do need to have that into Mrs. Fox on January 3rd, please. Okay. Yes, next we're going to discuss the trustee map, area maps, and
yeah. So let's see. Got my handy dandy clicker. We're gonna see how this works. So as you know, we went some years ago from an at-large system where you ran citywide, all 5 board members, to a trustee area system. And then this seen throughout the state. The law says that following any census report, we have to evaluate our trustee areas to make sure they're still balanced within the area. So before we start this, it's important to note that 19 out of 20 districts in the state of California on an average will have to redo their trustee maps because the demographics shifted during the last 10 years. There you go. Hey, it worked. So this slide simply reminds us of everything I just said, that redistricting is simply the redrawing of the boundaries. And so first step in this is to do a study to see if we are one of the 1 out of 20 or one of the 19 out of 20. The legal deadline to do this is February 28th. So the plan is to do the study, and then I'll spoil the report by telling you we do have to redraw the districts. And then you'll have 2 maps tonight, which we'll go over in this presentation, to have a discussion on which map you'd prefer. And we can either bring it to action in January to meet the deadline, or if you wish to have another month to discuss it, we could bring it in February to meet the deadline. So we're looking good in terms of timeline. 3 possible outcomes: no changes needed, some changes needed, and implement new maps. We do fall under the greater than 10% deviation from what should be the representation. So we do need actually to implement new maps, and you'll see on the choices in the next presentation that they're significant to all zones. The education code that requires it, 5019.5. I'm not going to read it, but it basically says that this is what we have to do. So the redistricting steps, we hired a company who took the census data from 2020. They looked at our zones, and they looked at the population. I don't know what you see there. That's our current population. That's our current maps as it stands, and this is what the finding of their report says. Yeah. So in concern, our zones 3 are areas 3, 4, because it's outside of the 10% allowable deviation from what would be a straight average. So you can see that population-wise, we're 10%, 10.5% too high in area 3, and almost 20% too low in area 4. So that's going to require us to do some redistricting. Additionally, they look at demographics and breaking it down to all the demographics that are represented in our school district. Again, looking to make sure that they're as balanced as possible, so the representation at the school board is equal for all demographics across the city, or I'm sorry to say the attendance area, multiple communities. So this report shows, yes, we do have to redraw the boundaries. The peak deviation shown is 30%, plus 10 minus 20 gets you 30%, which is greater than the 10% allowed. So by March 1st of 2022, will have to adopt new boundary maps, which don't have a deviation, or the deviation is less than 10%. The same company we did the research drew up some maps for us. Or do you have any questions about the study? Not about the new maps if you happen to see them yet, just the study. No? Okay, so the next presentation. Well, after today, I will say winter is coming. Oh, it gets close. You'll see when we draw this. You're right. You do have a good chunk. So these are again. This is done to rebalance, and they look at several things. Geography. You know, it doesn't make sense to have pockets of representation. You want to keep the zones looking to be geographically designed as you can with the demographics. Schoolworks, yeah, Schoolworks consultants, and they did the same analysis they did with the new zones to make sure they'd be balanced, and you'll see that here. You're looking for cohesiveness, and you also did consider, because we're allowed to, locations of current trustees. So we wanted to make sure the 5 of you were in 5 different areas, so we create civil war tonight. This one's really hard to see because the gray area is area 1, and you're correct in assessing that you have the most land. Population's all equal. And then in the next slide, this is again, there's going to be 2 proposals, map A and map B. And you know what? You did. Okay. So map area, this brings it a little bit more into detail. And what you can see is there's an area above area 2 that moved from area 2 to area 3 under this proposal. That green area, if I point to the, I don't know if I can, but up in here, if you're in the crowd, over here, if you are looking at this screen, move from area 2 to area 3. And there's a big area out here that moved from area 1 to area 3 as well. So area 3 picked up some land in there. You can see the dots in the board. You have them in your PowerPoint. The dots represent roughly the position of the current sitting members, and making sure that we kept that. We honored those. This zoomed in a little more. The kind of the white line through area 2 is the current boundary. So you can see it makes more geographical sense when you look at that. When you look at the current one, you're kind of wondering why. Went up and circled the house and came back, right? And I'm sure there was a demographic reason or a reason for doing that, but it would certainly always lead to that question. Like, why do we have little Martha Vineyards hook up here that looks interesting? But this map A does have clear cut lines in areas 2, 5, and 4 that make logistic sense. You can also see the area here move from 2 to 4. This area was gained by 3, or from 3 to 4. And then here we're moving that area 3 to area 2. So this used to run, I think, across, yeah, you can see it ran across 33. Now it's put it all on one side, which is a thing to consider, is that now we have an area that is divided, on one side of the highway. And that might be something to consider. You can also see a couple little zones. If I'm pointing this at you, I apologize. I may have run out of batteries. But you had a little island in there in area 5 that moved to area 4. I'm sorry, from 4 to 5. And then the green spot above area 2 that, yeah, laser pointer's not working, that moved from 4 to 5. So now it's going to be more clear cut lines. This is what the population deviation would look like if map A was adopted under current. You can see we're within that 10% threshold with a plus 1.33% and a minus 4 puts you at a deviation of 5.98%. Oh, 1.98 and the negative 4 puts you at a 5.98% deviation within the 10 you're allowed. So this would be a viable option should you wish to go to map A. Weigh a whole lot of numbers, which basically breaks down the demographics to make sure there's not that deviation there as well. And it concludes that we are okay with this map. If we were to do it, it would meet the requirement. The second option is map B, big wide view again. Area 1 rules the land. And you see now we've kept area 2 crossing 33, if that's a desire, but the hook did come back, and it's probably, well, I know when I did a study on this, there's a lot of population in that little hook, believe it or not. It's highly populated houses in that little run. So it means that red area that went across 33 probably equals the number of people in that little green hook. So it balances out the population. And area 5 picks up some land from 1, and area 4 picks up some land from both 1 and 2 to balance out the population. If I zoom in a little bit closer. Yeah.
I'm area 5. Little purple area.
I have that for you. It is Pine. Is it Pine? Pine. Yeah, it's Pine Street and Pine Court. It's like a little T that comes.
Wait, on B, that hook, when I think of people voting and that, it almost seems like the left side that's orange or brown, they're kind of like their own little island, and then you've got the other part. I would not, the hook bothers me. Just voting wise and
yeah, I was going to say a history teacher would bring up the term gerrymandering on that.
Right.
It looks like a gerrymandering.
I mean,
yeah,
because your neighbors, I mean, all along, and you're going to be talking, and you have some of the same kinds of problems or discussions, transportation, whatever, schools that they're going to. So that's why A, because I tend to be a very symmetrical person, makes me, feel more comfortable with people voting in that, because you're living next to people instead of being that little Diablo's an island.
I'm guessing that the vast majority of our constituents have no idea that we have this.
Right.
And that they really don't care. They'll reach out to one of us, if there's a problem.
Right.
And that happens all the time. Like people come to me, I don't ask, are you a District 5?
Right.
I don't know. Are you part of my realm? Are you?
It's like
Very few people get to ask me anything if they're not part of me because of where we are. But when I think of the town, when a hook just, I feel like the people on the edge are kind of like Diablo. They're separated.
We understand this.
Yes, I do.
And, Rose and I, we didn't really have a secret meeting, but we had meetings over the county supervisor redistricting.
yes, we did.
Congressional, we were organizing a resistance front. So we understand the law. Most people don't get it. I don't think Newman has a problem with demographics and I bet.
So Alexa had a question, I think, or a comment.
Go ahead.
So as a student, I would kind of have this curiosity since the specific board members who are in their specific areas in this area, if I had a question or something, do I specifically reach out to them, or am I able to reach out to others? How does that
The culture in Newman is no, you would ask.
Yeah.
I love that culture. You'd ask anybody, but where it comes into play is who you can vote for.
Yeah.
So if you're a voter in area 5, you can only vote in the area 5 election. So like in this case, area 5, as Mr. Snodderly, you wouldn't even see Mr. Bazaar's contest on the ballot or Ms. Conforti's contest on your ballot. You're only going to see the area you're voting in. That's where it comes into play. But no, if you approached Mr. Bazaar, he wouldn't say, well, no, you're a 3 or a 5, I'm a 3, that we have a good alliance across the political boundaries. So I think that's what Mr. Snodderly and Mr. Hurst was just saying, that they work well together.
Currently, I won't mention names, there's a gentleman lives in town who wants to be on the board. He's moved into a different do that. I think I'm up next. So,
Yes, you're up next,
so
I have a question. Did we get any?
can I get in trouble?
No, you didn't.
No,
Okay.
no, it's,
I don't know if we're actually broadcasting tonight, but if anybody in the community does have any input,
Yes.
I wish they'd give it to us because,
Yes.
I mean, I don't particularly care. I sort of agree with the President Conforti's statement that that little hook looks odd, but just because it looks odd. Other than that, I have no preference whatsoever, but I wish somebody, if they did have a preference, would at least tell us so I could understand somebody's point of view. I mean, if somebody says, look real strongly, look, I wish you guys would adopt this, then at least I would know somebody feels strongly about it.
so what we can do is put it out on our, after tonight, I want you to see it first, of course, put it out on the Facebook and say, hey, if you have a comment on this,
Please.
feel free to email.
Because
I mean, the thing that occurs to me that maybe sort of what board member Stotterly was saying, maybe somebody's out there thinking, I want to run for the school board, which is fine. And I don't know, you know, as far as I know, nobody is, but maybe somebody is. And they know where they live and they would know where they fall in the district. And that might motivate them to say, to come forward and say, hey, gosh, I wish I could run for school board and I'd like to lobby the community in my neighborhood. And it falls here, you know. So it might make a difference to somebody running or not. I wish they would come forward again and say to us, hey, I want to run or I want to do something and I have an opinion and here it is.
So
right.
then there's two ways we can go with this. We can do the Facebook campaign, maybe a parent square out to everybody saying, these are the two choices. If you have a preference, either come to the January meeting or email us and we can certainly make you aware of what the emails say. And then for January, we can either discuss this again for February approval, or we can put two action items on the, you know, one for A, one for B. You're going to deny one, you're going to say yes to one after that. That's up to the board. We'll take the will.
I'd like to do the January one if possible.
Yeah, and I would like to look at, first of all, looking at the gerrymandered part of B, I don't think that's the only way to accomplish that. And that does split, it splits my neighborhood. And so you're splitting up parts that are, you're splitting a subdivision. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it can be done differently. There are other logical places to split that without the gerrymandered part. But I'd also like to see at least the elementary schools in this, because I think that you sort of, the trustee areas probably kind of ought to follow schools. You know, Mrs. Robles is the principal in my neighborhood. And so not that, you know, that means anything different from anybody else, but Mrs. Conforti is, yeah. And so it makes some sense, especially if you really follow the California Voter Rights Act that thinks that you're going to represent your neighborhood that you wouldn't represent if you were elected otherwise.
But the demographics might be, you know, like, because they're looking at all the demographics, it may be that, say there's a family or that tends to stay in one area because it's there.
There's
So you have to even that out. You can't have it.
And remember, it's not just total population, but it's also this.
Yeah. No, what that gerrymandered picks up is two big county multifamily housing projects. But you don't have to keep going all the way around that hook. You can have a nice compact district that picks up the two. But anyway, they're probably trying to pick up, there's a great deal of population that is in those two county multifamily housing projects. And they're probably picking those up.
And my suspicion is, in reference to this page on that hook, it's probably picking up one of the demographics to get it within the 10% range. So that it very well could have gone and circled a house type of idea to pick up. I mean, they get that specific on the data. They don't need to share with that. We don't need to know that because we should make the decision.
Yeah, and I think
house by house basis, but it's more than likely to, you know, to keep this within the
I'm the trustee in area 2, and then I think Tim, you're in area 3. Correct?
Great.
Yeah.
3 is the smallest.
And I just want to echo what Mr. Snodley was saying, not to say anything disparaging about our neighbors to the north of us, but one of the reasons why we did get together was because when we finally got word really of what was going on with that redistricting, we hadn't heard anything about it because the meetings were taking place someplace else and we weren't really invited. And so I want to make certain that people know. And so that's going to be one of the biggest things, is that they know what the options are. So I thank you for doing that, for putting that on. So
Well, certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
What is the will of the board in terms of the January meeting? Would you like to see both maps back? Would you like to?
I'd like to see both
wait until
maps
February.
Okay, both maps
on
back.
the.
We could vote on one of them.
yes.
If we have any input from the citizens, either by email or letter or in person, listen to that, and then we'll vote.
And I'll ask School Works if there's a way to do a third map without the hook.
Please.
Okay. And I look over at Carolyn, I'm Miss Mendoza, because that means I asked. She writes it down. Thank you.
I mean, it's state law. It's just, I think as board members, I think the redistricting, whoever's here, whether it's Philadelphia, board, or Utah, I don't think it matters for us. I think we're here to keep the schools, set policy and, oversight, and we don't really care whose district it has. We're all working together. I mean, I might sneak over to, King Barrington over here at his, castle of the northeast.
You're welcome to come.
Yeah, and check it out.
Well, and I make note of that. One of my first things here, you went out to River Road to assist with the transportation issue. And I was in my mind, I was like, he's in area 5. That's not, but it doesn't matter. It's you're all serving the whole community. I appreciate
So
that.
it's a law, and we'll just vote on it in January. If there's input, we'll consider that.
All right. Now it's working? Oh, when it's red, it's working. Okay. So we'll see this again in January. And to me, it's better, I think, as a consensus for all of us, that we hear from our constituency. And if we don't, then they are putting their trust in us. Okay. Number 4, Coast to Coast 2022 Federal Advocacy. I always have a hard time with that. Trip to Washington, D.C. And
So Trustee Wallace put in a request for to attend the Coast to Coast 2023 Federal Advocacy trip, as it's an out-of-state conference. It requires board approval. So I'll let Mr. Wallace
discuss one.
present that for discussion.
Yeah. I even made notes for myself on this. What this is I've been actively involved. I sit as a delegate for the CSBA, and every year, at least Mrs. Conforti and I have gone up and we've lobbied our state legislature. This is a trip where we'll be going to Washington, D.C. Obviously, we have a lot of effect of what happens federally. Be meeting with our legislative folks, be doing a lot of work amongst ourselves about how things work and what's the latest up there. We'll also be meeting with the White House or the executive branch, the Department of Ed, and people like that. A little bit of what's going on in the past. The National School Board Association has done a lot of lobbying. They're sort of falling out of favor right now. They've got about 17 states that have dropped out. So CSBA is saying we probably need to be representing our interests there. So we'll be delivering our message of what the federal funds mean to us, what it means when special ed, which we all believe those students need, but then they don't put their money where their mouth is and pay us the portion they promise. So hopefully we'll be talking about some of that kind of stuff. And I hope you guys will support it. I will say, not going to catch me at it later. I do plan to extend this trip on my own dime and see the Smithsonian while I'm in Washington. I've never done that, but that'll be on my own dime. And so I hope that you consider this important and that it's good. I ask for your support. Thank you.
I know Mr. Bazaar, Mr. Wallace does a lot and gives us a lot of information after he's gone to these meetings. And when I go up with him once a year, it's very informative. And I feel that you're probably the best qualified person to do that and bring back the information.
Well, I do approval of item number 4.
Okay. We'll be doing it.
It'll be an action
later.
item.
It'll be an action.
Oh,
okay. Action items, consent calendar. The consent calendar items are routine in nature and usually do not require board discussion. Individual items may be removed by board members and presented for discussion in separate action. The consent calendar will be adopted by a roll call vote. May I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay. Mr. Bazaar?
aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye. Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
It passes 5-0. Approve first.
If I may, Ms. Conforti, I'd like now, just with the consent calendar approval, congratulate Mrs. Betancourt as
Yeah.
our superintendent. Thank you. Well deserved, and thank you.
Just another little job. Approve first term interim budget. Mrs. Mendoza?
I have a short presentation here for you. So first interim, of course, is all the activity that happens between the time we adopt the budget through the 31st of October. A lot happens between then as far as adjustments, information that we find out. So this kind of catches us up that far. So things that we needed to consider this time around, we had a lot of one-time funding coming our way both last year and this year, and some of it was some we knew about last year, but we didn't know where to put it, so we had to wait till this time around. What our ADA attendance rates and our enrollment trends look like, our Stirs on Behalf and contribution, and what the impact on the reserve for economic uncertainty, and changes to the LCFF calculation since budget adoption. So when we passed the budget in July, we were expecting about $44 million, just under 45. We have recognized a lot more federal dollars, about $5.5 million of federal money that's come to us, almost $4 million more of state money. So right now we're looking at about just under 55 million. So where is this money coming from? The LCFF gave us some unrestricted dollars statewide because there's a change to the calculation, which is allowing for additional funding for unduplicated students if districts have more than 50% unduplicated, and not just the unduplicated, but specifically the concentration dollars. They changed the formula for that. That will be ongoing year after year. The federal money is the ESSER 3 allocation of the CARES Act. So that is one-time money, but we have several years to apportion that out and to spend that down. And then we have a lot of new state categorical programs where Governor Brown hated categorical programs, did away with them, lumped it all into the LCFF and said districts have local control. This governor has taken all the one-time money and earmarked it for specific purposes. Some of that being CARES Act funding that the federal government passed to the state that they've now turned to us. So one is the Expanded Learning Opportunity Program, which is not to be confused with another grant that was an ELO grant. That was the Extended Learning Opportunity Grant from last year. This is called the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant. There will be a plan forthcoming. The Educator Effectiveness Grant, which is on the agenda for approval tonight. We had a presentation on that in November. We had Dispute Prevention and Learning Recovery Support, which is some special ed dollars, which were one time, and the state realized that during distance learning, there was a lot of districts that were short minutes and service minutes that needed to be given. So we were looking at how to rectify that. So that's what that money is earmarked for, to make the students whole. We have the A through G funding, which we will hear more about as well. There's another plan coming for that. And then the carryover for the extended learning opportunity, that was a one-time grant. The expanded learning opportunity program is going to be ongoing funding. So planning for the additional funding. So not only do we have the LCAP, we had to plan for additional plans for all the other ones. What we hope to do is take the LCAP, the supplemental update, which I believe is coming in January or February, and really consolidate these things and really bring it all together and show how it works, even though they all have standalone plans, which was what the prior governor really wanted to get away from, having all these standalone things. So this is a list of the programs, of the plans that we have that are on the horizon. Some are already in place, some are on the horizon.
Mrs. Mendo.
Yes.
When I was at the conference, I went to a workshop on ESSER 3. And after they got done, they basically said they opened their hands and they said, and it's as clear as mud. And how do we plan for something that we don't know how to plan for, because they haven't given us direction in how we spend our money? Because one of the people said if we spent it wrong, then they want us to pay it back to them.
Yes, that's very true. I mean, there was an example last school year. We had approval for certain things. You have to ask pre-approval from the CDE to use this money for specific things. I had asked for, we said, here's our proposal. We want to spend it on this. Yeah, that's fine. Another district wanted to do the exact same thing. And they said, well, now when this money is gone, you have to liquidate this asset. So that information was not on the email that I received. So luckily she shared that with me. And so we decided to go another way. We are having to look very carefully, because each set of money has different assurances and different rules. Some things you can supplant, some things you cannot. So we have to be very careful about what we're using it for. And we've been trying to stretch the dollars as far out as we can. So there are some things were available to us through the end of this school year. Some are available through the end of 23. Some are available through the end of 24. And now we have some that's available through 26. So we are really trying to be strategic and say, okay, we're going to spend this one first. And so the ESSER 3, for example, we're trying not to tap into that one at all this year. We want to just hold on to that one and then kick the can down the road as far as we can, stretch these out as far as we can to get the most value for the dollar. And some districts have said, well, we're going to move all of our regular general ed expenditures into this one-time money and free up to do other projects. That's not really been our philosophy, because we really want it to support the students, to do the learning recovery, to do what we needed to do to make the last year and a half not complete loss.
And if I can jump in on that, does it? She has many geniuses. One of her great geniuses is, wise man once told me, you plan for the good times during the bad and the bad times during the good. And when we start spending these monies, we immediately start talking about what we're going to do when the monies go away. And the idea we've all kind of worked together at is, if the program works, which goes to a comment I was discussing with the board earlier, is how do we know things are going to work, and setting up these studies ahead of time, then we can find other things that maybe don't work as effectively that we are funding to unfund when the time comes. So the how do we plan for as clear as mud? The answer is you plan for the good times during the bad and the bad times during the good. Right now we're in kind of some good times. So we're always talking, okay, we're going to buy this, but what happens when the money goes away? If it's a program that's truly servicing the kids, and we have a study that we know, at least at the cooperative level, that yes, this works, then of course that's going to be a priority fund. And so it's really taking the time now to analyze the program, saying, are they working? Are they meeting the end goal? And when they do, we know that they become more important than maybe other programs that aren't. Mm-hmm. But that's always the conversation. And, it's not, we have this much money to spend it, we can afford it today. And then 2025 comes up on us quicker than we think it would. And we're like, we're building those plans as well, what to do when the money goes away.
The one thing I was worried about, like you said, we as a district seem to be plan very well. We look ahead, we don't overspend before we have it. But it sounds like the direction that you get, it's constantly convoluted. Like it has to be done by 2024, and then all of a sudden they go, whoops, no, end of 2023. Do they do that?
They haven't done it backwards. They did one pot of money. They did give us an additional year because I thought some of the one-time state funding was going to be done by the end of this year. So we did the big expanded summer school program. We thought we had through this year, but now we have through next year, which is good because now planning wise, we have longer term things that we can look at and really design something. Right now we're designing a program through the expanded learning opportunity program, which is going to be what they call elective hour. So we're designing that we really fully have to be implemented next year, where the state is really looking at a 9-hour school day, mm-hmm. every day, all day, every day. So we're trying to get clarification in that. We're trying to design a program, kind of piloting it this year for the end through the end of the year. And then so we can really hit the ground running. But that's part of the issue too, is when you get the money in October and you have to implement something in January to turn on a dime, and it's a little challenging. Yeah. So Kim did a great job as far as putting a team together and really designing something with the principals to say, this is targeting TK6, this funding. And then what can we do 7-12? What other funding do we have so we have something that's continuous?
Thanks. So, and I hated to hit you with that.
That's okay.
But I forgot my notes in the wrong place.
That's okay.
Thank you.
So we have lots of plans. We have, we really look at how do we make the best outcomes?
Okay.
Sorry, I think the battery's still low. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, that was okay. So our expenditures, again, since we have more money, we've implemented more things into the budget. Where we had $45 million at the beginning of the budget, now we have about 51 million. So we had a little about we had about $6.5 million difference. Now that's not all, that whole $6.5 million is not going to be spent. With some of the money, the way it is you have to spend what you imagine your revenue is going to be. You have to budget all of that, although we know they're not going to spend anywhere near that much. So it makes it a little tricky. So our 8% economic uncertainty, which is what the board likes to see, at budget adoption was 3.6 million, and now it's up to 4.2 million. So we have a lot that we need to stay kept aside, but that's not the entirety of the reserve. Next slide, please. So we have a healthy multi-year projection, and this, a lot of it is just based on the attendance going forward. Now our attendance factor right now is very low, and which was to be expected this year. It's hovering low 90s, which is usually about close to 96%. So that's a big difference. Our enrollment is fairly stable. We're looking at, with the expansion of TK, we could pick up a few more students and kind of level things off next year. That's kind of the hope. We'll see in February when we get to kindergarten enrollment and TK enrollment. There are a lot of factors that are out of our control as far as what enrollment in ADA is going to look like. So this projection is very conservative. So we are looking to be fine the next 2 years. We have a good size reserve above the economic uncertainty, because of all the one-time money. So you're going to see a spike in that reserve. And then as the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see that spent down. So that's the nature of dealing with one-time money, is all this money sitting at falls to the bottom every year. And then as we spend it down and there's no revenue to counterbalance with it, you'll see deficit spending, and you'll see the reserve go down, and that's just to be expected. One note about the reserve cap: there is some language in the state budget with the rainy day fund, and this is the first year that it's going to be enacted for next year. So we will need to make a plan at the end of this year to limit what they call the assigned and unassigned reserves to no more than 10%. So there will be a board resolution probably in June when we adopt the budget to let us do that. And it's just a designation. But what they're asking for, when I do the ending fund balance right now, there are assignments. You know, you'll see the different line items of the portions of the reserve above the 8%. What they're asking for is for a commitment for the board to say, we are committing these funds. We cannot use these funds for anything else without board approval. You know, we can't just move things around, and have the board is saying we're committing this for various reasons. So we will come back to that when at the end of the year. They're looking at that.
Don't we do that anyway? We vote on the reserves and all that.
Yeah, but to actually do a board commitment, like in some funds, the Fund 21 which is where the bond funds go into.
Right.
The ending balance of that is what we call committed, because the only thing that can be spent on takes board action. So with this, we just do the assignments. Where it's a little more flexible.
Right.
And that is due by June 1?
June 30th.
June 30th.
We'll do it when we do the budget adoption. And then everybody's favorite topic, STRS and PERS. So this year, STRS is at 16.92% and PERS is at almost 23%. You can see that those are jumping. My hope that we'll hear in January that they're going to use some of this one-time money, this budget excess, to buy some of this down. Let's hope. Because if you look at per $1 million, 21,800 per million doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about the baseline was 82,000, and now it's going to go to 191,000 per million, and then I mean PERS is just off the chart, so it's going to 271,000 per million. So these costs are just keep eating away at other programs and just how we are able to be competitive salary wise. So average daily attendance, this always has an impact on funding. This is where the money comes from. But this year and last year we were held harmless if we showed a decline. So we use the same numbers. This year, if we do show a decline, we'll use what we had last year. So that's what I budgeted at, because our enrollment is down about 30 or so. So next year and the year after, we are projecting a slight decline, but we're not sure that will materialize because of the impact on TK, and there is some new development starting. And if we get a few kids in before that, it may even out. So we will monitor enrollment very, very closely. But with the funding increases that the state's projecting as far as just cost of living and the way the calculation is, I don't see a staggering decline of revenue just from the LCFF. And of course, the impacts on our projections is universal TK, which starts next year. And it's going to be phased in over the next 3 or 4 years. So we'll take students, a few more students than we would have this year. And then it's phased in a few more months at a time. So we're kind of projecting that we'll pick up maybe another 15 students in TK next year. And it will be the same as what kindergarten looks like. And then we do have 2 new development projects that will be starting in the next couple of years. Does I have any questions from anyone?
Wow.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, it's like trying to figure out how to get through a maze without knowing where the maze is going. No cheese allowed.
I'm always interested in knowing it about cash flow. Thank you for including that in your report before there was even questions to ask. Thank you.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the first interim budget? Have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye, 5-0. Approve board action calendar. Yeah.
No.
Excuse me?
No.
Number 3,
Mhm.
approve board action calendar.
No. Approval of educator.
Effectiveness.
Oh, interesting how mine is. Okay. Approval of educator effectiveness block grant expenditure plan.
This was presented last month.
And maybe I just missed it, but there's a term in there called universal design for learning. Could you just, I should have probably picked it up last time, but you define that one for me, please.
So universal design learning is the best graphic I've ever seen that just explains it. Is imagine you have a fence that you want to look over and you have 3 students, one's 4 foot, one's 3 foot, one's 2 foot. Well, the step they step on would represent the learning they would need to all see at the same fence. So when you design lessons, you think about the support you're going to give for all students and not just on their physical height. So it's a metaphor for their, you know, their preparedness to accomplish the task. And it's an intensive training. I'm fortunate have been through it. It's an intensive training, a thought-provoking training about how you can take one lesson to one group of kids, but give all of them individual support to not cut a knot hole in the fence and see through the fence, but to all achieve the goal of looking over the fence.
Oh, wow.
And it's both strategies and a change in that mindset of how we build lessons.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to approve that?
I'll make that motion.
A second?
Second.
Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Well, Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
And Mrs. Conforti votes aye, 5-0. Approve board action calendar. Yeah,
Yeah, we got that.
that was the calendar.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, the board action calendar was discussed last month.
Mhm.
There was that list and we made
Yeah,
the
yeah, all the
Got a
changes
list.
that were coming.
the things we'll see each month.
Right.
It's a living document, obviously. As something pops up, we'll decide.
Be in
to keep
flux.
it on in the future.
May I have a motion?
So moved. So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye. Okay. Okay, this is, okay. Approve conference request for Paul Wallace to attend Coast to Coast 2022 Federal Advocacy Trip to Washington, D.C. A motion?
I will make that motion. Tried to her.
Yeah,
And okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. Mr. Bizarre? Mrs. Conforti, aye. Mrs. Hurst?
Aye. Aye.
Snodderly?
Aye.
And Mr. Wallace passes 5-0.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Bring back notes.
Lots of
Lots of
notes,
notes.
lots of information. Approve the successor agreement for 2021-22 between NCLTA and NCLUSD. Approve. Is there someone to speak to that?
Well, this is the collective bargaining agreement, and approving the tentative agreement for the teacher union in the district. I want to thank Mr. Smith and NCLTA. They have such a great working relationship, and it's a pleasure to see work together to get to an agreement. And so this is before you tonight. It's been ratified by the union, and upon your ratification, will go in effect.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Mr. Bizarre,
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst,
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly, Mr. Wallace,
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye. Approve continuance of substitute teacher pay rate.
Mr. Smith will speak to this.
President Conforti, members of the board, we obviously want to continue to remain competitive in our recruitment of substitute teachers. We haven't stopped needing them. However, in this competitive job market, it's difficult to secure substitutes. Add to that the fact that all of our neighboring districts have increased their substitute rate in an effort to recruit those substitutes. If we were to not extend this, we would only be penalizing ourselves further. So I asked with your consent that we extend that rate of $225 per day for substitutes through the end of the school year.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mhm.
May I have a motion?
I have a question. Is that more or the same as Gustine's?
Gustine does, they have a little bit of a different model. They have kind of a variable pricing, if you will.
Really?
They will have different rates for different days. They'll look at data and they'll Monday after the Super Bowl.
I retired. I thought
that kind of thing.
When I retired, I said, oh, I'm going to, the second time I retired,
Mhm.
like I'm going to be a sub. And, you know, trying to get into Stimba or this district, you had to apply through the county.
Mhm.
When I tried to apply through the county, I was told they're not accepting any more substitute teachers. I go, really? That's really strange. What if they run out? But whatever, I never could get past that. But Gustine called me a lot. You know, once they found out that I could swing an axe handle and all that. And so I want to make sure, you know, we're competitive with, you know, Delhi was the other one. Oh, you're an ex-Marine? Yeah. How about Monday? Come in and sub.
Mhm. Yeah, the pricing, admittedly, or I say the pricing, but the pay for substitutes in some districts, we've even had teachers joke with me to say, I think I'm going to resign. I can go make more as a substitute and I can golf on Fridays.
Mhm.
And so the reality is that this is temporary. This is not forever. But if we're going to remain competitive with
Well, yeah,
neighboring
I'd
districts.
rather have a sub come in rather than a superintendent and you know, in the kindergarten room.
The other thing we've done is what we're trying to do is
Mhm.
hire 3 subs that just come
Yeah, have
every
them.
day. And then right now the sub application's open indefinitely at the county. And even if we got into that situation, we could hire subs individually, just not use the county to do that.
Yeah, I thought that was really strange when I applied.
They look at the macroscopic approach of the whole county has enough subs. They don't look microscopically that it's hard to get them out on the west side.
On the west side.
So they just say, well, no, we have it. We want to make sure we don't have too big of a pool because then they won't get enough work and they'll go find something else to do.
Right.
So they try to balance that. And I
I
know
told
when
him, I said, hey, I got all these credentials, elementary and, you know, single subject secondary, and I live around these 3 schools. Makes sense. I can walk over there. Oh, no, they don't need. That's what I was told.
yeah, then you said pick up the phone and go, yeah,
Yeah.
you need to
Yeah.
open.
No, it's all right. Gustine kept me busy until I decided to have more.
Okay, may I please have a motion to approve the continuance of substitute teacher pay rate?
So moved. I'll second it.
Mr. Bizarre,
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst,
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly,
Aye.
Mr. Wallace,
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti passes 5-0. Approve dismissal of certificated employee 35728.
This was discussed in closed session.
Yes.
I'll make that.
I'll
Second,
second it.
Mr. Bizarre,
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti, aye. Mrs. Hurst,
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly,
Aye.
Mr. Wallace.
Aye.
5 passes 5-0. Authorize superintendent, assistant superintendent of curriculum, instruction, and Title IX coordination, and president or clerk of the board to sign all warrants and orders in the name of the board. May I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Bizarre,
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst,
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly,
Aye.
Mr. Wallace,
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye, 5-0. Approved 21-22 annual teacher salary schedule.
So when you approve the ratification of the collective bargaining agreement in it.
That
it
automatically-
changes the
Yeah, we did
schedule.
that.
Okay.
So
May I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes 5-0. Approve NCLTA salary schedule extended teacher pay 21-22. That is the same.
it's part of the collective bargaining.
Right. So motion,
So moved.
a second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye 5-0. Approve 21-22 classified management salary schedule. That's, may I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second,
I'll second it.
Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes 5-0. Approve 21-22 certificated management salary schedule. A motion,
I'll make the motion.
a second.
Second.
Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti 5-0. Oh, thank you. Yes, there we go. 14, approve superintendent salary schedule.
Don't blame you.
I don't know. I think he works a little, not too hard. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
You better after that. Mr. Bizarre? Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye. You would have dug yourself a hole. Approve amendment to superintendent's employment agreement. A motion?
So moved.
This has to
Would
be
you-
read out, right? Item 15 has to,
I,
there's a portion you have to read out by law for the superintendent's amendment.
I don't have that. part. Don't have-
Let me get that for you.
Okay.
Nancy, get that for you. This part right here. Yeah, that part.
Yeah, I can access it.
I had it.
Salary commencing July 1st, 2021, the district shall pay the superintendent the annual base salary of $187,549, which reflects placement at step 1 of the 2021-2022 superintendent salary schedule, referenced as Exhibit A, commencing the 2022-2023 school year and each year thereafter. The superintendent's annual base salary shall advance to the next step on the salary schedule, provided superintendent receives an overall satisfactory evaluation in the prior year as determined by the board. Except as provided. I don't need that. Okay, now that I have to have the right page, may I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye. It passes 5-0. Future agenda items, approval of governance handbook, trustee area map, after we've gotten information, if any comes in, audit report, and a single plan for student achievement. Mr. Posey, would you like to speak now?
Yes, thank you. I first want to thank the staff and the community. We donated over 80 coats to students in this past month on a drive that we were doing for school, our Beyond the Bell program. I want to thank everybody. It's just a great thing. We still need more, so if you want to donate them, we'll gladly take them. I want to thank Mr. Smith and Mrs. Mendoza. We did an Employees Making a Difference the breakfast banquet. Breakfast. It was a breakfast. And like Mr. Smith said perfectly in his introduction, it would have just been a really cool PowerPoint without the breakfast. So we honored 9 employees who were nominated by their managers. We selected 1 to go on to the county. So we'll have more information on that for you. But it was a great morning to celebrate employees. I appreciate the efforts on that. Again, congratulations. We expect great things of you, and no pressure, but lots of pressure, but no pressure. And again, Ms. Conforti can give you everything you need to know about living in New York. So
Oh, yes.
again, congratulations to Mrs. Betancourt for the well-deserved title. I do want to, even though it's kind of a piece of negative news, but I do want to bring the positive out, and that is to thank the Newman Police Services for their role in that rumor that Alexa talked about in her report. And you know, they really teamed and partnered nicely. And I think it's something we forget about, how nice it is to have that relationship with the local police services until you don't have that relationship with the local police services. And I appreciate Chief Richardson and our SRO for investigating the issue and getting to the bottom of it, identifying the responsible, and we can make this a learning moment. So I really do appreciate that relationship. I did meet with the designers of the 33 Corridor project. Really excited about some improvements that they've planned that's going to be submitted to Caltrans for basically Stir Road South through town. Fascinating discussion. They're going to have a separate walkway north of Inyo, so that our students won't have to, coming from across the highway, won't have to walk along the highway, and they can all cross at a particular stoplight that will have a pedestrian crossing well lit. And they've really planned it out with schools in mind. They even talked about it. I don't know, maybe I'm a nerd this way, but I found it fascinating. They talked about coming from the south into town. They're going to plant clusters of trees, and then as you get closer to town, they're going to line them up. Psychologically, drivers, when they start to see clusters of trees become lines, naturally slow down because they know they're coming into a town. And it's not something conscious, it's just, and they know that trick. And so they talked about some things they're going to do, which are pretty neat. Includes some cobblestone brick type stuff along the 33 while it's in town to just kind of give you a little rattle as you come through if you're going too fast type of thing. So I appreciate they're all doing it for the safety of our students who have to find a safe access to school. And so that was a neat conversation, a neat project. We'll have more present as that moves along the line once it gets through the city. I want to thank everybody for the CSBA conference. It was a great conference with information and the breakout sessions. It was also nice to break some bread together and get to know each other outside of this forum. I had a text from my wife who says she enjoyed meeting you all, and she asked about you all every day, and I'd remind her I don't see them every day, but she's always asking about you all. And then to everybody here, to all the staff, the story I'll tell is I thought the greatest experience in the world, or feeling in the world ever when I was a student, was that last day of school before winter break, right? And you realize I got 2 weeks off, and I realized that was just training for being a teacher, because the feeling's so much greater when you're like, okay, I've got 2 weeks off. And this year is so well deserved for all of our classified, for all of our certificate, our managers. They're ready for this break. And I want to wish everybody safe and happy holidays and happy New Year's. And I hope you get time to recharge some batteries, to spend time with family, and to really relax. You've certainly earned it. It's been an interesting year. You know, we're halfway through it. So thank you all. It's been a great run. So that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Posey. Mr. Bizarre.
I would just wish everybody happy holidays. Also, I know most of you, probably everybody, has seen that the availability of vaccines has been expanded. So if you're a person who has children who are eligible, I would urge you to get them vaccinated. I know we have in our household. And I'm sure we're going to have a pleasant vacation, and it'll be fun to see everybody come back in a few weeks.
Thank you, Ms. Rizart. Mrs. Hurst?
Okay, I was able to attend the Employees Making a Difference breakfast, and it was absolutely marvelous. It was great. It looked beautiful, and the homage that was paid to them was great. I'm a deliverer in the senior meal program, the Meals on Wheels. Yep. And all of these presents up here came from the 3rd and 5th grade, right? What was it? 1st grade, okay. And I am so appreciative of that because we have the senior Santas that will be going out to deliver those gifts along with other ones that have been brought here along with the meals. So I thank you for that. Once again, as Superintendent said, congratulations to the student rep and Mrs. Bettencourt. Okay. And I'm very, very, very glad to see the 209 index person here. Thank you. I'm very, very pleased. Okay. And Merry Christmas. And
that
right there by the window.
By the window. No, that's not 209 index.
Oh man, your name dropped.
You'll write an article.
I was hoping that the 209 was here.
They were specifically invited.
Well, I take that one back. Okay?
Yeah, 2 demerits.
Yeah, we're really excited you're here, but I would be even more excited if they're listening, if the 209 index could get someone here for school events and for school board. Merry Christmas to everyone. Have a happy, healthy, safe, restful time off, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you. Mr. Snodderly.
How do I follow that?
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, we mentioned something in closed session about the 1,500 new houses, or over on 33 in that area. And then the word came up, we need a new school. And then, but that said a floodplain. And then I think it was Mr. Wallace said, well, all of Newman is in the floodplain. You know, it's been a few years politics wise when Congressman Jeff Denham, the Army of Engineers finally approved a project, as I recall, to flood abatement for Newman. And I'm just wondering where that is on their list of stuff to do. Remember, anybody around remember that?
Yeah, remember it, but nothing's happened.
Yeah, nothing's happened. So at what point do we plan for a new school? We got a while, right?
It's going to come quickly. They're moving pretty aggressively on that project.
25.
So 2024.
So are we going to have a committee for new schools?
Yeah, we will.
I want to be on that project.
Okay, absolutely.
I'll be on it. I'll charge my scooter up. We'll get going. And then the other thing, the California School Boards Conference, I thought a lot of the areas were very good, but I got attracted. I like vocational education. We have kids going to Columbia. Just remember, if you take any test, there's an answer you don't know, pick C. That's what got me through college. But I ended up hanging out with all the building trades. Of course, they were giving me free coffee cups and stuff. But I didn't, I asked them about Newman. I said, I know we have people come to the high school that talk about building trades, but I didn't know who. And I got all their cards. So at some point, I'd like to meet with somebody, or someone send me an email from the high school. Let me know who comes out. I know Modesto Junior College comes out, but who comes out. And these building trades, although they're union, the kids get into these trades. They have to take a test, obviously, pass the test, and then they get a job. I mean, the sheet metal guy, their school is up in Mather Air Base, so the kids would have to move up there, but they get a 40-hour-a-week job, and they become apprentice metal workers. And so they go to school at night. And it's a long program to be a journeyman, but it's 5 years. But we have a number of kids that get up, graduate. We ask them what they're going to do after school. We have kids that go to Columbia and Harvard, Berkeley, and those places, but then are in the military. But we have a number of kids that say they're going to join their workforce. But if you don't mind, I don't want to put anything. I've got all these cards. Once I'm able to email and type again, all these guys and girls at the building trades offered to come to the high school, set up either something during the lunch period or go to certain classes or whatever. I know you guys are all busy, but I'll try to get information and get that back to you. In the meantime, let me know who, if you got a moment, just send me an email or something that says these are the people that show up and talk about vocational education, career paths for our kids, if you don't mind. Yeah, I said something this week.
Yes, you did. Yay.
I had surgery. I'm goofy. The drugs are good. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next year.
Mr. Wallace.
So yes, and Vern, I'll pick up some of yours in some of our comments from 2+2. Conference, I'm hoping we get together and have a study session once we get back. Is really valuable. I picked up a lot of stuff. I'm excited about a lot of things, but I would like to get something, action items based on what we learned. Brittany, welcome. And
you do look like her though, because I've met her somewhere.
Years and years ago, when before I had all the gray hair, and probably when you were much low, when you were a student instead of a valuable employee, they used to have a spot on the agenda for both CLTA and CSA, and so I hope that you don't just come and attend, but if you've got something, we'd love to hear your opinion as a representative of your crew. Delegate assembly, we had mostly elected new officers. When we do our board evaluation, we've just gone through this new process that we're very excited about. We've got this new iReady, but we did that because the board bought a system that wasn't very effective. I think we need to own that and look at our decision-making skills, our decision-making process, not skills, how we go about making decisions, because, it was a several $100,000 oops. And we tell our students and our staff, and it's true, you have to be able to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're really not trying. But at the same time, when you make one, you look back at it and own it. And so I want to make sure we do that with our board evaluation. 2+2, we're working on establishing some routine agenda items, some things that we know we'll come back to every year, stuff like we have the rivalry gangs. Well, usually that means the whole police department comes out and helps with traffic control and stuff like that. We've got stuff. So that's really one of those places where we're both working with the community. Everybody's pretty much our constituents one way or the other. So we're working a lot on that so that we don't just get there and kind of look at each other and go, well, let's have a piece of candy and move on. But what did we come to talk about this month? Last month, we did a lot of talking about, and I think that the board will see what we've talked about, what Mr. Posey and Michael Holland are working on, is having the city come talk to us, because they do the planning. They're the ones that turn loose and say, yeah, you can develop this chunk of land and go ahead and build your 1,200 houses. And then we're expected to provide schooling for them. So we're really good reason for us to want to know what they're up to and be ready in advance. But one of the things that he talked about was the floods, and really kind of said that he's still working through where exactly are these floods coming from, because that has a different solution. I think a lot of the thought is that the floods basically came from water getting backed up at the railroad tracks. And that means getting the railroad tracks cleared, getting the water. So he's really thinking in terms of those. Yeah, because we've had lots of fancy plans. We had a dry dam up in the hills. We've had a levee around town. And as best I can tell, and I'm not being facetious with this, every 5 years, the military rotates their folks. They get a new commanding officer of the Engineer Corps. And he takes a blank slate and goes, well, we have to reevaluate every one of these projects before I can, give my blessing to move forward with them. And everything starts over every 5 years, and none of those projects get done in 5 years. So they're constantly in this. They're there, people work on them for 4 or 5 years, and then they get scrapped, completely cleared, and start fresh. So Michael is thinking about flooding, and he's really thinking about diagnosing well where this flooding is coming from so that he's got a good solution. So that was kind of the answer to your question. It's not a, this is the problem, we need to do this, but it is a, we know this place floods and we need to think about what we're going to do about it.
We need to think about climate change. We just had people die on a tornado. Where I grew up in tornado country. And so I have relatives there. Had a tornado in December that was EF 4 or 5, go 4 hours on the ground, 250 miles. Yikes. And people ignored it because they said it's December, the sirens are going off, but we don't get big tornadoes in December. And look at how we're getting our rain. We're in a drought, and then suddenly we get a, Pineapple Express, and we get a big dump of rain. And, I just think all that needs to be considered when we build a school. You think you have problems now, wait till you get a phone call that says we have our buses, floods coming down 33, we need to evacuate kids now. So
yeah. And then the final point that I'll make on that is it's never too early to start that planning, because I truly never want to see the district build a school. I want to see the district go to a developer and say, this is what it's going to cost you if we build a school. Maybe you'd like to give us a school instead, because that's what they do for a living. We didn't hire Mr. Posey because he's really good with a hammer. We hired Mr. Posey because he's the educational leader of this district. And so we'd really like to see a developer swing a hammer, but you never, ever want to let the developer design your school. They will absolutely make a very cheap school, and you're left with this gray medium security school for the rest of your life. We want to design something, the Barrington project, I'm very proud of. I was in that committee, and we want to do that. We want to have a set of plans, say, this is the school we want. This is what it's going to cost us to build it, and have them go, that's ridiculous. That should be half that. We say, yeah, just give us this. Yeah. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Happy holidays. Okay, thank you. I promise not to be long. I was so happy to be here to recognize our certificated employees. It's so rare that we get to have a small group and have a beautiful breakfast. And it was nice to see the smile on their faces and sit with some of the principals. Also, Mrs. Mendoza, thank you for making the budgets when we do them pretty clear to me. I know my coworker knows more than I do, but I thank you for answering those questions. Also, the high school made wreaths, and I received mine. First of all, it was twice as big as I thought it was going to be. It's beautiful, and I would love to see the Floral Club possibly maybe next year start up. One time they were doing it like every month. I love flowers, but I hate dirt, and I'm not good at dirt. And it's been a long year so far, from August till now. We've seen faces of children who were afraid to come into school and now are so happy. Now they're happy because they are going to get a break. But I know in January, those faces are going to be as wide and as happy because they're going to get to see their friends again, just like us seeing our friends and not having to wear our masks. But please be safe. This is a very difficult time this holiday. We get together. Please, like Mr. Bazar said, if you're not vaccinated, be careful. Wear your masks as best as you can. I hate them. They're confining, but they've kept us well. And I'd like to thank Mr. Posey for the first part of the school year. You've had a rough year as far as not having any sleep. You need to have some time off. Mrs. Fox also needs a little bit of time to have her head off. And thank you very much for the year that we're having. And Alexa, have a great winter vacation. And thank you, board members, for dealing with me. And we re-elected our officers, and they are the same as they were before. So I'm glad to be with you for another year. Have a good year, and please be safe. Thank you. Happy holidays.